Over the last few years, audiences have seen an increase in overtly lesbian characters in film and television. However, sapphic love has been present on the big screen for over a century. This series explores the history of lesbian representation in film, looking at a few of our favourite examples and the hardships filmmakers had to endure to bring these characters to our screens. In this episode, we'll look at the first lesbian films to grace our screens, starting in the 1920s right up until 1950. Let us know your favourites in the comments. Welcome to Sapphistory On Screen. Cinema as we know it started in 1895 with the Lumiere brothers' first film screening. But even before that, moving picture cameras were simply used to film slices of life, working, dancing, and windows into other worlds. Before narrative film had even started to develop, the first kiss was filmed, and it happened to be between two women. Edward Muybridge filmed The Kiss in 1882, and although this is comprised of a series of photographs, it is widely considered the first film kiss. Moving picture cameras developed soon after that, and narrative and characters took over our screens, telling stories of fantasy, fear, and love. With romance dominating the silver screen in the early days of Hollywood, it wasn't long before sapphic love made an appearance in the 1922 Hollywood film Manslaughter, directed by the legendary Cecil B. DeMille. Though brief and not a part of the main narrative, this is widely regarded as the first lesbian kiss on the big screen. In the US at the time, same-sex relationships were illegal and punishable by imprisonment. But despite this, queer culture was booming. The 20s meant the beginning of the Prohibition era and speakeasies, underground bars which illegally sold liquor to patrons. Prohibition bred a rebellious society as people became restless and began to defy the government's ban on alcohol. And how the 20s roared. A post-war economic boom, illegal liquor, and underground parties meant people, and especially women, were standing up against oppression. Having just won the right to vote, women all over the United States were cutting their hair short, wearing shorter dresses, dancing the night away to jazz music, and expressing their sexuality in a way they hadn't done before. This rise in underground bars also meant that masquerade balls, or drag balls as they are better known, became more popular too, as they tended to serve alcohol. Queer people were forming communities in a way they hadn't before and were beginning to rebel against the straight culture that had been built around them. They were being more open about their sexualities, and this started to show in movies. And it all started with one little kiss. A clearer depiction of a lesbian character came from 1929's silent film Pandora's Box, a German film produced during the Weimar Republic era that had unusually liberal views for the time. Pandora's Box depicts a lesbian romance between Countess Geschwitz, played by Alice Roberts, and Lulu, played by Louise Brooks. The Countess is seen lusting after Lulu, and the couple dance together in a crowded room, ignoring the disapproving looks from those around them. The film struggled at the box office, thanks to the emergence of sound in other pictures. However, it has since gained cult status as one of the first queer love stories. Since World War I and the loss of thousands of male soldiers, women in the affected countries were often seen dancing together or even living together. Theorists such as Lillian Faderman have suggested this apparent shortage of men and the sexual liberation of women in the 1920s encouraged women to be more sexually open, and so lesbianism was edging into the mainstream, inspiring this scene in Pandora's Box, as well as literature such as 1928's The Well of Loneliness, written by Radcliffe Hall. Due to the increased visibility and emerging discussions around lesbianism, publications at the time demonized lesbians, claiming they were perverted alcoholics and drug addicts. So it is unusual to see such a tender representation so early on in film. Back in 1930s Hollywood, Morocco was released, starring bisexual actress Marlene Dietrich. In one scene, Dietrich takes a flower from a member of the audience at a show and then gives it to her love interest, played by Gary Cooper. The story goes that Dietrich suggested kissing the woman and taking her flower, which the director allowed, and when the studio wanted to cut the kiss, Dietrich argued that doing so would disrupt the continuity of where the flower had come from. The scene stayed in the film and became the first lesbian kiss involving a main character. As a result, Dietrich faced controversy over the kiss and the choice to wear a man's suit for the scene. Costume designer Travis Banton was reportedly inspired by Dietrich's gender-bending fashion choices in a time where women wearing trousers was still unheard of. Dietrich was nominated for an Academy Award for her work in this film and cemented her status as a queer icon. Back in Germany and nearing the end of the Weimar Republic, a film was released that has become iconic in sapphic culture. 1931's Mädchen in Uniform, based on the 1930 play Gestern und Heute, meaning yesterday and today, by Christa Winslow. Though not the first depiction of lesbian romance, this was the first film to explicitly focus on a lesbian relationship. And although the film is considered taboo due to focusing on the romance between a teenage schoolgirl and her boarding school teacher, it has secured its place in queer herstory and also inspired a Hollywood film in 1933 called Queen Christina. Queen Christina follows the true story of monarch Christina of Sweden, who was rumoured to be a lesbian after refusing to marry and sending romantic notes to her lady-in-waiting. One scene in the film depicts this affair when Christina kisses and flirts with her lady-in-waiting and declares,
"But, Your Majesty, you cannot tie an old maid."
I have no intention to, Chancellor. I shall die a bachelor.
Although the true story has strong indications of her queerness, the film downplayed it due to pressure from the studio and the mounting complaints about Hollywood being too promiscuous and erotic. The same year, Queen Christina was released, and 2 years after the release of Mädchen in Uniform, the Nazi Party took control of Germany and enforced strict censorship laws. The infamous Joseph Goebbels controlled the media and was responsible for propaganda, the use of media to brainwash citizens to obey and agree to the new rules enforced. The Nazis took control of all media and banned certain films from being shown anywhere, including any that depicted homosexuality. Mädchen in Uniform was one of the films banned under Nazi rule. Germany wasn't the only country going through tough censorship. In 1934, the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America enforced the Motion Picture Production Code, or Hays Code, as it is better known. The Hays Code banned profanity, nudity, explicit depictions of homosexuality, and more, and lasted until 1968. Despite the code being introduced, filmmakers found a way to subtly incorporate queer characters, and thus queer coding was born.
Why are you looking at me that way? Won't I do? Yes, you'll do very well indeed.
Queer coding is when a character's sexuality is implied but not explicitly mentioned. This can be through costume, mannerisms, or subtext. Alfred Hitchcock's 1940 classic Rebecca is an example of this, where Mrs. Danvers is shown to have an obsessive attraction to the titular character. However, the book the film was based on was written by a bisexual author, Daphne du Maurier, and Mrs. Danvers was played by a lesbian, Judith Anderson, so there is no denying the subtext here. Unfortunately, the majority of early depictions of lesbianism show these characters as villainous, perverted, or unusual in some way. Anderson went on to become the first performer to receive an Oscar nomination in a specifically gay role. Through the first few decades of film, queer characters were firmly establishing their place in the narrative. But the story of sapphic representation on screen really developed over the next few decades. Look out for the next episode as we explore the golden age of cinema in the next Sapphistory on Screen.